people should be very careful when they're writing these restraining orders, because what we do in the discovery process when we think there's a false restraining order being issued is we'll go through all the prior emails, all the prior text messages. We'll interview everybody that the opposition has spoken to, and if there's inconsistent statements that don't match that restraining order, they're cooked. It's very dangerous because it's an inconsistent statement. Because even if, assuming the facts are true, you establish the abuse factors, if you're not credible because you made inconsistent statements that aren't explained away with innocent mistakes like, "Oh, the light was green, no, it was red." Well, that's material. You can't mess that up. But he was wearing a blue shirt versus a red shirt, maybe immaterial inconsistency. But as my grandma always said, it's easier to remember what happened than remember what you told everybody else. You got to be very careful that everything you write in there is going to be used against you in a court of law.
And ideally, I mean, there's and it's kind of a question of what you want to include and not include, but ideally, you also want to be thinking about what you can prove or what you can credibly claim. I've noticed this. So there was a case that I had recently where the opposing party in this case had done a whole bunch of things. And I really had to talk to my client and, let them know, all right, I understand that they've done all of these other things. We need to focus on this, and this, because we can actually prove those. And at some point, if you're just throwing a bunch of allegations out there, it can be a little bit difficult to prove them, or some of the less provable allegations can distract from the more provable
It's
ones.
true, but I think cases settle easier if I picking up a case, represent a respondent, and I see just a bare bones
Yeah. Oh,
statement,
absolutely.
and it's like, okay, well, I don't even know how strong this case is. I don't really know what they're alleging. Now I got to go do discovery versus I get this detailed play by play thing, and then it tests out. Like, as we're doing our investigation on our side, it's easier to advise the client to settle the case because, information is king. Knowledge matters in these cases. The goal as a lawyer when you're representing someone is try to do the data dump of everything that happened, put it in your head, and be able to run the chaotic facts through the prism of the rules of evidence and the elements that have to be proven to see what pops out the other side if it leans this way or that way.
Mhm.
Like you make that motion because of the preponderance of evidence standard. This isn't a criminal case, even though there's liberty on the line.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the sad thing is restraining orders and stalking orders. They have impacts greater than some criminal cases. Okay, I got a disorderly conduct for crossing the street and impeding traffic.
Who cares?
I
I
mean,
mean, yeah,
maybe someone cares, but what would you rather have on your record? That or
a stalking
a
order. Yeah,
stalking order that's
yeah,
permanent or a restraining order for 4 years with renewal and it goes in perpetuity and someone looks at it like, oh, you were found to be an abuser.
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot at stake here. But the burden of proof is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning that, you have doubt that's reasonable based upon the evidence, lack of evidence, or conflicting evidence that gives you something that doesn't go beyond a moral certainty. And you look at that evidence, you're like, you know what? The defense put together a pretty good case I question this evidence here. I'm not convinced here. So I'm not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. And all the time in jury trials, we're saying, well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, like they may have proven by preponderance of evidence that more likely than not this happened, but didn't meet that bigger threshold. People have to keep in mind that's not that threshold. But they still have to prove that it's more likely than not probable that it happened, that when you look at the case and you weigh the evidence, you weigh the testimony, okay, I'm leaning this way.
And they have to prove each element by the preponderance of the evidence. So even if the judge says, yes, there was absolutely an incident of violence, that's definitely proven beyond the preponderance of the evidence. If there's no imminent future threat, then the petition could fail there.